a question worth sitting with. If someone Googled you right now, not your company, you, would they find enough to trust you with their business? For most founders, the answer, surprisingly, is no. Not because they lack experience, because they've been too busy doing the work to be known for the work. This is going to be Strategy Talks today, where we get into conversations that actually move your business forward. Today, we're going deep on authority, real, durable visibility that makes the right people trust you before they even get on a call with you. My guest spent 20 years building that for other people. Then she did it for herself. And she just told me in the green room, she just wrote a book. And what she built is a blueprint for going from hidden to credibility and being credible without a big team or a big budget. This is Strategy Talk. Stay tuned. I'll be right back.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. It is Doreen, and we are live Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific time. I'm so glad that you're here live with us. If you're watching this live, let us know in the comments whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or perhaps LinkedIn. Now, if you're watching this as a replay, please let us know in the comments that you're rewatching this. And even though you're not live, you can still ask myself and my guests questions. Now, last but not least, welcome to those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. I know we have quite a few listeners, so I want to make sure that you know you are welcome as well. So we're going to talk about building your visibility. And so let's bring onto the stage with me today's guest, Kelly Schuknecht. How are you today, Kelly?
I'm great, Doreen. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm very excited to talk about this, like stop being the best kept secret, right? And so many of us do that. We kind of sit back and we're like, oh no, I don't want the attention on myself. I'm busy doing the work. But in order to get more work, in order to have that authority, we need to be seen. So let me get to this question that I have. You spent 20 years making other CEOs and founders look good, building their brands, elevating their visibility, doing the work behind the scenes. And then you in 2024 suddenly did it for yourself or had to do it for yourself when you were laid off. What was that moment like when you realized you had to become the face? Because I'm sure that was a shocker for you.
Yeah, it's so much easier to be behind the scenes and to do all the work making somebody else look good. But when I started my business, I just knew I had to do the things that I had done for my bosses previously. And I had to start treating myself as the CEO, the face of the company, the person who needed to get out there in front of people. So it was such a foreign concept for me because I had always just been kind of behind the scenes and yet I had done the work for other people. So I knew exactly how to do it, but it felt very uncomfortable. And my journey into that actually had started a couple years before that because I like to share about a book that I read. It's called Personality Isn't Permanent by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And when I read that book, he talks about the trauma. For me, it wasn't trauma, but the thing that holds us back from growth, right? And like these stories we tell ourselves that like, I am not that person. I don't do that thing, right? And I had read that book a few years ago, and I knew that the thing that was holding me back in my career, or that would be holding me back in my career if I wanted to grow, was being able to be in the spotlight like being able to go out and speak, to do even just podcast interviews, to be able to just put myself out there. And so I had actually started doing some video content a few years ago, just kind of like getting myself more comfortable with it. So when I shifted into now I have to get on stages and actually talk in front of people, it still was like the next step for me. It was still hard, but I had just been practicing and pushing myself to do things that felt uncomfortable.
That's really good. So honestly, tell us, what was the hardest shift that you had to make from telling people what to do and then telling yourself to do it? What was the hardest part there?
Yeah. Again, like from the marketing standpoint, the words behind it, it was easy to pitch myself for an event and say that I would go and, I can go and talk about, personal branding and thought leadership and how to build your platform and all those things. It's easy for me to just write those things. But the actual act of getting on a stage for me was the hardest part. Like actually, and I think that a lot of times we tell ourselves, like I said, those stories of like, that's not me. I'm not like that. I'm not that person. Right. But I learned from doing it, like getting up on stage and teaching something. I realized that I had so much in that 20 years of experience to share. And I had things
Mm.
that I could teach and that people were learning from. Like you, I've been very content heavy in my career. I'm very, I can sit down and write a blog post. I love writing, but it's different taking that teaching and doing it on stage, right? But so the hardest part for me was just like actually doing it and getting myself to just to allow myself to say yes to those opportunities and step up on the stage.
All right. So this is completely off topic, but I want to know, is there a secret, like getting yourself psyched up before you get onto stage? Is there something you wear? If there's something you eat, if there's something you do, what do you do when you're backstage and you mic'd up and you're ready to go? How do you do that? I just want to know your secret. I know we all have our own little ceremony or our little things that we do.
Yeah, I think, well, I would say I probably didn't eat much the first few times because I was like, I can't, there's nothing I could do other than just, I think the biggest key for me was just practice.
Hmm.
So it was no like, I learned two things I hired a speaking coach, actually went through a program to just get better at it. And, a couple of the things was just like practicing my message, right? I mean, I just sat in my hotel room the night before my very first talk and just rehearsed it over and over and over until I felt like literally I could say it without even looking at the slides because I had just done it so many times. I knew exactly what was coming. And then we also learned a lot of like breathing exercises and just getting yourself to slow down for a minute and take a breath and think about what you want the audience to get out of what you're teaching and really just focus on that because that's the most important part. You really want them to take something away from the talk other than who is this person and what.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. No, that's great. I have one tip if you're listening to this.
Yeah.
I usually record myself. I practice and practice and practice, record myself. And then when I go for a run or I'm in the car, I listen to myself. So then I can it's like listening to a story over and over. And when you're a kid, you start remembering it. So for me, it's auditory. It's how I learn. So I record myself doing it. And then
I don't know if I'd want to listen to myself.
It's an interesting thing, but I have found that to be the best for me. And I will, the recording will be where I'm not reading, but I have bullets. So I know I'm on target and then I can repeat that over and over. And I think for me, one, I'm an auditory learner. Two, English is my second language. So for me, it's a better way to make sure I do this right. So, all right, we're totally off script, which is fine. All right. You've described yourself as the person behind the person for 2 decades. What did that role look like day to day? And did it do anything? I guess you said right before, a couple of years before you started working on your own visibility, but all those years behind the scenes, that I'm sure it didn't really enhance you. So what made you, I guess the question is, what made you a couple of years before you went out on your own, what made you realize to start creating those videos and start being more visible yourself?
Yeah. So I think, I was previously in a role, I was director of marketing. And so, I was at this kind of weird, like middle of my career stage where I was like, what is the next step for me? Right. Like, what
Mm,
does that look like? I loved the company where I worked. So I wasn't thinking of like, leaving the company, but I just thought, well, what I think we should always be looking at our presence and thinking about, our career path, even if we think we're going to stay in this role forever. I think we
mm,
should always be thinking about like, what is, what does growth look like? Right. Like, so if the company I was working for right now today disappeared, where
mhm,
does that leave me? Right. So I just kind of was thinking through those things and thinking as a director of marketing, what would be the next step? Well, perhaps a CMO role or a VP of marketing or, some other kind of marketing role where, I thought about what that role requires, right? It might require being in front of the company. It might require, going out and speaking to showcase your expertise. I mean, I just kind of thought about like what that future might look like. And I knew that I had this fear that would hold me back if that role were an opportunity. And so that's what I was thinking at the time. My role, when I say person behind the person, I always identified as that because in my 20-year career, I had worked directly for CEOs. So the CEO was the face of the company, and then I was the person who they could throw their ideas at, and I would make it happen, right? And when I would go out and talk about that, so many women would identify with that. Like we tend to be in these support roles, helping people behind the scenes. We're comfortable with that, right? And so I knew that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but I knew that like if I really wanted to grow in my career, if I wanted to start a business someday, if I wanted to be known as a leader in my industry, I really needed to push through that and to start developing my own platform.
that makes a lot of sense. And this is good career advice for anybody who's listening, whether
Yeah.
you own your own business already or you work for somebody else. You should be known for your expertise, whether you work in a company or not, because especially in this volatile environment, we don't know whether you still have a job in 3 months or six
Right.
months from now. And we used to use LinkedIn, for example, as a resume, and it's not anymore. It's a networking place. And being visible on LinkedIn is going to really help you in case you ever need to find your next client or your next job. So I think that's really smart. So, Kelly, let's go into how you help currently CEOs, leaders get known, be visible.
Yeah.
The first thing I'm going to say is they hire you, but they're most likely still going to be a little bit resistant, right? So they're probably, if they're like anything like the people I work with, they know they have to do it, but they're not always comfortable.
Yeah.
Um, what does that resistance look like when you get that resistance? Is
Yeah.
that imposter syndrome? Is that I don't have time? What does that look like? Or what do you get from people, even though they give you money and say, let's do this, Kelly? What do you get?
It's funny. Your question is just like one of our newer clients is just really top of mind as you're asking that, because he's an owner of a 25-person agency. They've been in business for 25 years. He is the expert. He has been for 25 years, but he's just very humble and just isn't the kind of person to walk around going, look at me, look how great I am. Right. And I think sometimes that's what personal branding feels like when you're showing up in a way that you're kind of promoting yourself and your business. It can feel icky in that way, right? Like
Mhm.
it feels like, oh, like I don't and it's so funny. We've been through onboarding with him and every time we even mention like, yeah, we might get you into this event, right? To speak at this event. He's like, ugh, like there's this resistance to doing it and not for fear. Like he doesn't fear going up in front of people, but it's like this necessary evil of growing the business. Like he knows, and not to call any of this evil, but like just using that term, right?
Yeah, sure. No,
Um,
no, no. I think we all know what you mean.
yeah. um, but I think I think right now you mentioned like nobody knows what their job is going to be in the future, right? Like AI is changing every industry drastically right now. We're living through this, right? One of the things I think that we're really going to see when it comes to AI is that your competitive advantage as a business owner is your personality, your authenticity, your real person, your real self, right? Uh, AI can, as you know, it can replace you with content writing, right? Like it can create social media posts for you. It can, there's all these things that AI can do that you can use AI for. But what's really going to make business owners stand out is their real, genuine take on things, their opinion about things, their stories about what they can share that's not just something AI can generate. That's what's gonna make people stand out in the next this next wave of business, right? And so it's more important than ever that business owners get out there to networking events, get up on stages, get on podcasts, do all the things that are showcasing their personality and their real self. And so this one client of ours that I was talking about, like he knows that. And also it's just like, it's been easy to, he hasn't been the person behind the person, just the person behind his computer, doing his work, meeting with clients, not putting himself out there, but he knows the value of that. And so he's really now ready to lean into it, although just resistant, maybe a bit of imposter syndrome, but more so just the feeling of like, this isn't me. I don't like doing this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and on the flip side of that is people feeling like, well, I don't, we kind of said that, but I don't want to be bragging, right? I don't want to be somebody else. So the way I would explain it to somebody, and if you're listening to this might be helpful, is to show your true self, but dial yourself up to 11, especially when you go live, it's, going live is different. And this is the one thing that AI can't do, right? The conversation that you and I are having right now, AI can't replace that. We don't know what's going to come out of our mouth. It's authentic. It's real. The same thing when you're in front of a live audience, when you're on stage, it's the real you. When you're networking at a conference, that's the real you. So that's the space I think we have to protect, but that's also the space where you as a leader should be in. Should spend more time in that space. Real networking, conferences, speaking, podcasting, like you said, having these live conversations. So if you're worried about that, just dial yourself up a little bit, be your authentic self, but just with a little bit. You know what I do? This is 7:00 at night. I had a coffee. I was like, I've fallen asleep. I don't know. I need to dial myself up. I'm in bed early. I'm an early riser, early to bed. And these 7:00, shows, sometimes it's like, I'm tired at the end of the day. I was up at 5:45 this morning with my doggies. So I was outside, taking them out. So it's late for me. So yeah. I have a coffee. I dial myself up and now I'm here. I was very excited to have this conversation with you, but it's like that, getting yourself ready, psyching yourself up, because here's the truth, right? On the other side is somebody who needs to hear your expertise. That's who you're talking to. Talk to that one person. So let's talk about the framework that you use, right? 3 pillars: visibility, credibility, and consistency. Can you walk us through how those work together for especially somebody starting from zero? Because we want to give some actionable advice to people who are listening or watching this.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, visibility, credibility, and consistency. So the first step is to get visible, right? Like, so if you are that person behind the person, or you're the business owner who is just like, I just don't feel comfortable doing it, right? There's more than one way to get visible. You don't have to just show up bragging on LinkedIn every day. But it's getting visible in front of your target audience, helping your target audience find you, right? Discover you. So it might be going on a podcast interview. It might be, like I was talking about, doing video content, right? So I thought about ways that I could create video content without, in a way that felt genuine, right? And for me, it was books. And so I started doing book reviews of nonfiction books I had read, where I would actually write the review first. So like the words had already come to me. I'd already like formulated my thoughts around it. And then I could do a video and just share a little bit about that, right? So that was one way of me getting visible in that time where I was still the person behind the person. I wasn't trying to get clients from my content. I was just sharing something that I thought would be useful to other people. And, so the visibility piece, and again, like going back to speaking also, what a great way to get in front of your target audience, finding those conferences, being on stage, people really see you as that expert when you're up there speaking and teaching on your topic, right? So the first thing is getting visible, finding ways to help your target audience find you. But it's not just about being in front of them. It's also about that credibility, right? So some of the ways that you can showcase your credibility or help people see you as the authority would be having a book, right? So you and I talked about that. Like, I recently published my book because one of the things I knew in my business was for me to get on stages, what better way to showcase my credibility than to show I have a book. I wrote a book on this topic. And if you want to know more about me, you can go and read the book. And then when you're done reading it, like, let's have a conversation, right? Other ways that you can showcase credibility, case studies, putting together, telling the stories of client work that you're doing. It doesn't have to be a formal case study, but just, going out and telling the stories of you working with your clients. I like to say, it's not just about or if I go speak on a stage, for example, I'm not going to show up in pajamas because I want people to see me as a credible expert, right? I'm going to show up in a way that I look like the credible expert. People make decisions about us quickly. And the way that we appear, or the way that we show up, not just our clothes that we're wearing, but the way that we show up helps people see us as the credible expert. We are the cover of our own book, right? So people are making a decision very quickly about us. And so just those little pieces of credibility that we can add into our content, add into our bio, the ways that we can help people see us as the expert are really important. And then the last pillar is consistency. So you can't just do it once. I published this book. I put out several posts a couple weeks ago when I published it. Now I need to work that into my content strategy. I need to work it into my presentations. So when I'm going out and talking, my book is mentioned, right? When I go on podcasts, I need to bring it up. Like, it's not about just doing something one time or sharing something one time, but it's about consistently showing up, because you never know when somebody discovers you, they may not need you, but 2 years from now, they may need you, right? But you need to constantly be showing up in a way that you remind them that you exist and that you are the solution to their problem whenever that problem presents itself to them.
That's awesome. No, this is really great advice. I wanted to ask you kind of like a side question. You talked about showing up on stage, and is it more important in how you act and what you say, or what you look? You talked a little bit about look. Is that part of your branding, or is that part of just, I'm a little surprised, I guess. Credibility is how you look, but I guess you have to dress the part. Is that what you were saying?
I meant that, yeah, more of an analogy, right? Like, so
Okay.
yes, I relate that to like showing up on stage. Like, I need to look like the credible expert, right?
Okay.
But our content, or the way that we show up online, is just as important in establishing our credibility. So, I'm not going to show up on LinkedIn talking about my dogs every day, right? I'm going to talk about the things that are going to help people see me as the expert, right? I'm going to talk about my experiences with clients, with thought leadership, with personal branding, with those types of things, right? So, so yes, I mean a little bit about how you actually appear, but also more so just in the credibility that you're building through your experience and sharing that.
That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. Now, you talk about niching down. You said it disqualifies the wrong buyers and pulls in the right ones. How does a founder who's afraid of narrowing their market get comfortable with that trade-off? Because that's a big one.
It is a big one, and it is so hard. And I'm still in that stage, as I'm growing my business. Of course, I don't want to say no to anyone, right? Like, if somebody's coming to me, I want to be able to work with them. But when you niche down, you become a big fish in a small pond, right? You become known in that space, and it's easier to serve your clients well, to become known where, as you're networking, people know you for what you do, right? Where if let's say I want to attract thought leaders, right? But I'm just putting out there anywhere, right? So I'm going to go to an accounting conference today. I'm going to go to a law firm conference tomorrow. I'm going to go to a manufacturing conference next, whatever, right? Yes. Could they all use thought leadership in their marketing strategy? Sure. But I'm just kind of spreading myself around, right? Whereas if I am really focused on one industry, let's say I want to be the go-to person in the accounting industry for building a thought leadership platform, I'm at every accounting conference, and every person who's there knows who I am because I'm showing up where they are consistently, right? So
Mm.
it's yeah. Okay, so you agree with that, but
I get it. I get
even
it.
though
Yeah.
I say it, it's hard to do because you feel like
It's
you're closing doors.
It's really hard to do, especially if you've had success in several industries, right?
Yeah.
Because, I've had success with clients who are law firms. I've had success with clients who are B2B. I've had success in a lot of different places. So, where do you niche down? And as a marketer, I've seen people really go down the wrong rabbit hole. I've seen
Mm.
marketers who bet everything on Google Plus. Remember Google Plus? I don't
Oh,
know if
yeah.
you remember,
Yep.
or they go all in on TikTok, and which is
Or
great.
Clubhouse, that
But
was the most recent one, right?
Clubhouse, that was the
Yes.
most recent one that kind of just went out. So there is niching down, and there's niching down, right? So it's I understand what you're saying, but I love that you said that, because as a marketer, if you're going to a marketing conference and expecting to be known there, that's really, really hard, because you're a marketer amongst marketers. But if you are a marketer and you have something specific and you're going to an accounting conference, you might be the only marketer there. So there you go. That's what you mean. Big fish, small pond. In the accounting community, you would be known as the marketer to go to. So that makes a lot of sense. And I hope if you're listening or watching, that kind of clarified all that. I cannot believe we're almost at the end already. I've got another question for you, and I think this is also actionable. You talk about content repurposing. I am a big fan of that. I
Yes.
do this show every week. I repurpose everything. You turn one interview or webinar or podcast into LinkedIn posts, articles, video clips, all of the good stuff. For someone with a small team or no team, what's the minimal viable version of that system?
Yeah, I wish I had this ready, and Doreen, when I do have it, I will share it with you. But so I'm actually going to be sharing a tool that I built, which is every podcast interview I go on. I do these podcast interviews. I did 60 podcast interviews last year. And I created an AI prompt that every one of them, I pull the transcript, I put it into the prompt, and it gives me specific things that I ask for. And I don't ever put anything into an AI prompt and then just take it and use the content as is, as I'm sure you're probably similar, right? But it gives me a starting point, right? So I have, here's the LinkedIn post to share the episode. Here's, 3 clips, and it gives me timestamps, right? That I can pull those if I wanted to, right? You don't have to do everything in it, but it gives you just a number of content pieces that you can then take and do something with it, right? So I just kind of have like a formula for myself of like every podcast I go on, I share it, then I share the clips of it. I will share it on different platforms, right? So I think the minimum is to do at least 2 or 3 ways of sharing every piece of content that you do, whether it's a blog post, it's a podcast interview, it's even if I go out and speak, they'll have the video that they'll share, right? I think that's the biggest mistake people make is they do a podcast interview like this, for example, and they don't even share it.
Or shared once.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
once, I mean, once if you're lucky. I'm shocked by how little people even share it because they go into it thinking, I'm going to get in front of your audience, Doreen. I'm going to get in front of your audience, right? You're missing 80% of the point, right?
Yeah.
The point is taking that, sharing it with your own audience, because that's positioning you as that expert, right? And then finding ways to work it into other ways that you can share that information. Like, so I can take things I said on this and turn that into little pieces of content that I can share over time, right?
Mhm.
There's so much you can do with any piece of content. So I think minimum is you share it. Maybe we'll go back to even that minimum, share the one thing, right? But then also look for additional opportunities for repurposing that content.
I love that. Yeah. For those watching and listening, in the last 2 years, every podcast episode I've been on, I've taken the transcript and made that into a blog on my own website, because
Yes.
every blog that I do about strategy talk, somebody else is the expert. Kelly, today you're the expert, right? You're going to talk about the best kept secret and thought leadership. I'm not an expert there, but when I'm on somebody else's show, I become the expert. So those are now all blog posts on my website, and that
Yes.
really helps. And
Yeah.
then, like you said, those can also become pieces of content for LinkedIn, and I'll frequently go there. So I actually just worked on one today. I was on a podcast a couple months ago, finally got the recording transcript. It's live. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a blog today. So if you get anything from this, repurpose that content over and over. If you have, Kelly, if you want to share the process, if you want to send that to me, I can put it as a resource in the show notes. So people who are listening, I have a similar process as you. I also take the transcript, put it into AI. I've got a couple of different projects that I have, like make it into a blog and then, LinkedIn posts and all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that's great advice. Minimal viable product is share it at least once. And then if you get an image from your podcast host or you get clips, just share those clips, share the images. So I love that. That's awesome. Well, we are at the end. I think we could talk about this for another 30 minutes or so, but I'm going to let our audience connect with you. Would you let everybody know how they can connect with you and where?
Yeah. So you did share the link on the screen, but I'll say it for anyone who's listening. AuthorityXFactor.com is where you can go to find the book that I wrote on this topic. So we talked about that a little bit, but also there's a great resource on that site. So at the top of the page, there is a personal brand scorecard that you could take. It's a quiz you can take. It takes about 3 minutes. It's super quick and easy. While you're going through the questions, it's thought-provoking, right? So it's going to make you think about ways that, or maybe some of the things that you're not doing right that you could. But in the end, it'll give you a score and recommendations for how, like what to do next if you want to get to the next level with your personal brand. So if nothing else, that's a great resource for people. It's free, it's easy, and then there's also information about the book there as well.
Awesome. And then if they want to connect with you, on what social media platform should they go? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn. Well, yes, LinkedIn, of course. I show up about 3 to 5 times a week talking about these topics, right? But thought leadership, personal branding, all the things that we talked about and more. So if that's of interest to you, connect with me. My name is hard to spell, but Doreen, I'm sure can put the link to
I
my
will
LinkedIn
put
in
the
show
link
notes.
to your LinkedIn profile in the comments and in the show notes. So
Perfect.
absolutely. Kelly Shu connect. And yes, find her and connect with her. And I'll make sure to get you a link for an easy connection request. We're at the end of Strategy Talks. Thank you so much, Kelly, for being here and being my guest. And thank you to all of you who stayed to the end to listen and to watch. And if you're made it all the way this far on the replay and you have questions for myself or for Kelly, please ask him in the comments. We'd love to know that you are watching this, whether that's today or 3 weeks or 3 months from now. So we'd love to know. Thank you so much. I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.